Prime Minister, look, full house here. Thank you.
It seems that you'll be needing a bigger auditorium next year.
I think we will, yeah, we're a corporate services, exactly. Can I just say to all of you, good morning and a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us in Canary Wharf on a very blustery day. I did ask the Prime Minister if he could have brought a bit more sunshine for us, not just for yesterday, but we've got work to do, so we are not looking outside. So this is our fourth Greek investment conference. We organise this every year with the Athens Stock Exchange and in partnership with our sponsors and partners who we value our relationship with. So thank you to Alpha Bank, Eurobank, National Bank of Greece, and Piraeus Bank. I'll just start with a couple of words, and then, Prime Minister, if it's okay, we could get into a conversation. And then this large audience is definitely going to want to get the mic, so I hope you don't mind a few questions from the audience. Past 6 years, Greece has truly emerged as a remarkable success story. And I'd just highlight a couple of successes and achievements. We've seen Greece return to full investment grade rating by all of the major rating agencies. The Economist ranked Greece amongst the top 5 global performers for 2024. And honestly, it's no wonder, and I could go on, but we want to get into the conversation. Real GDP since 2019 is up 11%. Our Morgan Stanley economics team takes all of the data available and has identified Greece as an outperformer for 26 and 27. And as a firm, we are hugely committed to supporting business in Greece and have done for many years. So it's my deep pleasure to welcome the Prime Minister, a person who we have to acknowledge is greatly responsible for this huge transformation. So thank you. So let me start with a couple of questions for you, if I may, to get the discussion going, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So this year's been an incredibly successful year for Greece, both in the sovereign and the domestic capital markets. Let's start big picture for the audience and talk about key policy objectives and the modernisation agenda, if I may.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. This conference seems to have become an annual sort of institutional event, and I'm happy that I see so many leading Greek companies participating. I think it is also an indication of the fact that the Greek economy is more diversified than many people appreciate, with many companies that are extremely competitive, very extrovert, focused on innovation, and looking to capture new markets, because I think this theme is going to re-emerge in our discussion. I think in terms of the big picture, this year was a year where we truly delivered on our main targets. The fundamental premise upon which the success of the Greek economy has been based has always been the combination of, I would call it, ruthless fiscal stability with a pro-growth oriented agenda. And of course, the two are completely interconnected. The more we consistently deliver primary surpluses, the more confidence we build when it comes to institutional investors, the more capital flows into Greece, the more we can build upon our growth story. And I think what we have achieved in Greece, which probably justifies your assessment that we will be outperforming most of the markets in 26 and 27, I think goes certainly against the European trend. At a time when most European governments are struggling to pass austerity budgets, Greece is both delivering on its fiscal commitments by producing significant primary surpluses, but also has the fiscal space to support both families through tax cuts, but also to continue to promote a pro-growth agenda. So I think it's this combination of fiscal stability, very rapid reduction of our debt as a percentage of GDP. I consider this to be one of my primary obligations. We should not forget that Greece inherited, as a result of the crisis, and in spite of everything that happened with the Greek debt, a massive debt overhang. And I cannot sort of sleep with any sense of conscience by not being aware of the fact that we cannot inherit to the next generation this significant debt overhang. So when I look at our debt projections, I think we've surprised the markets pleasantly, but we're doing it without implementing austerity. And this is due to the underlying growth potential of the economy, the structural reforms that we've implemented, the capital inflows into Greece, the investment-led growth that we are currently supporting, because it's not just about real growth rates. It's about the composition of the growth. Greece in the past also had positive growth numbers, but it was a growth that was fueled by consumption and funded by debt. That's no longer the case today. So I think qualitatively our growth is different. And at the end of the day, this is a story of convergence. I looked at the numbers presented by Eurostat in terms of real net disposable income. I stress net because we've significantly reduced taxes. They've improved. We've seen an increase. This is after inflation. This is real net disposable income improved by 22% over the past 6 years. So this has to be a story about convergence, getting closer to Europe. And why not overtaking Europe on certain, at least, policy areas? And I think we're delivering on that agenda. And what I want to assure this conference is that we will remain totally committed to reforms in spite of the fact that we've entered our third year of our government. Usually there's a tradition of governments to sort of push on the brake as they get closer to the elections. I don't intend to do that. I will continue with important structural reforms, many of which will deliver the next growth story after the next elections.
Tremendous. Well, you are a role model for many nations. I will just leave it there. I'll let the Prime Minister pick that one up if he wants to in comments. This just back to this point about this sustained economic resilience, and if I just tie that back to the past few years really pushing the country to move closer to leading European economies. What are the sort of key areas that Greece needs to focus on just to keep the momentum of this long-term growth model?
Well, if we acknowledge that the primary focus should be on attracting investment, both domestic and foreign, we need to make it easier for people to invest in Greece. And of course, when we talk about investment, our investment thesis, this is not just about tourism and shipping. Of course, tourism is critical for Greece. And if you look at the number of people who came to Greece, almost 40 million this year, and the net inflows when it comes to tourism, my goal when it comes to tourism is I'm unapologetically ambitious. I want to make Greece the #1 tourist destination in the world when it comes to tourism, focusing on high-quality tourism, expanding the tourist season, services around tourism, because one should not forget that when one invests in tourism, there's a whole local supply chain that supports tourism. This is not just about bringing in people from abroad. I mean, tourism is a key driver of the economy. But of course, there are many other sectors where we can deliver significant growth from energy to manufacturing. People forget that Greece, and many companies represented here, has a very decent manufacturing base, logistics, infrastructure, services, healthcare, education. We're opening our education market now to the private sector, and of course, tech. We can talk a little bit. Maybe you ask me questions about technology and AI, because I think we have very ambitious plans. So when you look at what are the underlying tools, we need to focus on further simplifying the business environment. For example, land use regulation, spatial planning, justice, where we're making significant progress, although it's a slow-moving and long-term reform process, digitization, labor market participation. These are the sort of the underlying trends that need to be addressed in order to ensure that we will continue to outperform Europe when it comes to investment. When we came into power, investment as a percentage of GDP was at 11%. with a European average at 21%. There was a net loss of capital formation in Greece. We're now at 17%. So we've made good progress, but we need to get to 20% or even higher. So this, for me, is an agenda, not just for the next year, but for the next 5 years. Because for me, looking at the electoral cycle, I have a very clear plan of where we need to go over the next 5 years. So we need to envision, what Greece is going to be in 2030. Or if I want to be more ambitious, where Greece is going to be in 2040. We're beginning we'll announce very soon a new sort of national dialogue on education. When you think about education, you think about a kid that will enter kindergarten, a 4-year-old that would enter kindergarten next year, they will graduate from high school in 2040 in a completely different world. So I think we're capable of having these sorts of discussions, and that's why my horizon goes beyond 2027, because I know that the reforms that we may be implementing now, we will see their impact in terms of growth in some years from now. So we need to focus on the short term, but also be very cognizant that we also need to lay the foundations for the medium and long-term growth.
Interesting. I'm sure there'll be questions about the diversification of the economy. That's really incredibly interesting. I would like to get onto innovation and technology, but before I do, could we just talk about energy and climate change and transition? There are incredibly ambitious targets, the NECP goals. There's a focus on developing a regional energy hub. How will your government sort of manage to continue to progress on climate change and energy independence and develop and contribute to European policy on energy security and the green transition? I thought this would be helpful to get this covered, and then we can talk perhaps about technology and AI.
How much time do I have? Because I could be talking.
I can see that.
No, this is a big topic, and of course, it's also a topic at the heart of European competitiveness. We'll talk about this maybe in a bit. Europe cannot be competitive unless it has competitive energy prices, especially when it comes to electricity prices are almost double what they were in 2019. And this is not something which is long-term sustainable. But if I look at Greece, 6 years ago, we took a decision. We will go all in when it comes to renewables. We will move away from lignite because at the time it was already obvious that it would be too expensive, and we need natural gas as a transition fuel for the foreseeable future. And we've delivered on these goals. We produce more than 50% of our electricity from renewables. And if I look just at the interest in the pipeline, there's more interest than we can practically accommodate. But we will reach our renewable targets, but we need to focus on storage, whether it's batteries or pump storage. We have the geography to accommodate for it. So this is, for us, going to be a big push. But of course, we need to, for the first time, we're exploring our own resources. Can we become energy independent when it comes to natural gas? Who knows? But we have enough indication that it's worth trying. So we will have the first exploration rig, the first actual drilling after 40 years west of Corfu, in what seems to be a very promising exploration attempt. And of course, I'm happy that this is not just something which is led by Exxon. We have 2 Greek companies taking the lead, Energean and Hellenic taking the lead in this effort. So maybe there's going to be significant upside in terms of our energy independence. But we know that in the short to medium term, we will use natural gas for electricity production. And of course, we are also leveraging our geographic position. We were not part of the energy map of Europe 5 years ago. We're just somewhere in the periphery. Now, with everything that's happening and the upheaval of the global energy market, we're right at the center of the developments in the Eastern Mediterranean. And this is very important for Greece geopolitically. The fact that we're the entry point for American LNG, not just into Greece, but also into the region. We are a provider of energy security for our northern friends, the Balkan countries. And of course, when you look at Ukraine, the fact that we're sending gas to Ukraine today is not just economically, but geopolitically very important to Greece. So we've turned up what used to be a disadvantage into an advantage. And of course, it's not just LNG. It's not just looking sort of to American LNG. It's also looking towards the south. We're building over the east, our electricity interconnections to Cyprus, to Egypt, and the new trade routes when it comes to the Middle East and India. So when you look at overall the discussion around energy in Greece and in Europe, I think there's a general understanding that when it comes to decarbonizing, let's do the easy part first. Let's not put an inordinate cost on our businesses, especially those that are hard to abate sectors, in terms of decarbonizing at a time when the technologies are simply not commercially viable. We cannot just look at the green transition and our climate targets independent from competitiveness and social cohesion. And I think this is something which in Europe, at least at the level of the European Council, we have sent very clear directions to the Parliament. We are still ambitious in terms of our climate goals, but we should not forget that we're 6% of global emissions. We will not solve the emissions, I mean as Europe. Look at shipping, for example. We are tremendously competitive when it comes to shipping. But at some point, there was an agreement discussed at the level of the IMO that imposed essentially a tax on shipping companies with the prospect of developing some decarbonization solutions way out into the future when the technology is not at all obvious. So I think this was a wrong approach. We made it very clear. We need to focus on the transition fuels, for example, shipping, natural gas. So let's bring down the emissions where we can actually do it first and do it in a fast way. So we're talking about ambitious targets when there are still many European countries that burn coal for electricity production. So let's do nothing is easy, but let's do the obvious stuff first, and let's ensure that we don't destroy European industry in the process of chasing climate targets which are simply too ambitious.
Well, it's very encouraging. And of course, timely, because there is this, global phenomenon with the whole build-out and development of AI and innovation. And you've really taken steps towards technological enablement. We were talking about this earlier, AI adoption. And of course, US and China, stealing a march on the rest of the world. What are your thoughts of just shifting from energy, which is obviously critical in the AI and innovation, chain? What are the policies? I mean, there were some gaps identified in the digital decade gap, report. But give some thoughts about this. It's such an important thematic for the global economy.
Well, first of all, let me point out that for Greece, the digital transition has proven to be a tremendous opportunity. And I would argue that maybe this is a space where the state is actually could be even ahead of certain of private enterprises. If you look at what we've achieved in terms of digitizing the interaction between the government, businesses, and citizens, I think it has been transformational. Our gov.gr initiative has proven to be tremendously successful, to the point that gov.gr is the second most popular brand in Greece, private or public sector. So I think this tells us something about how people embrace technology if it really makes our lives easier. And of course, it's a productivity enhancement. And look at how much time, especially a medium-sized enterprises lost in terms of dealing with the state. It is really improving our productivity to be able to do that. So this is a sort of 1.0 transformation. The 2.0 is how do you add AI enablers in terms of improving the productivity of the public sector. And we're really working hard on this topic, working with some of the top tech companies, but also how you develop a tech ecosystem in Greece that develops primarily AI applications. But most importantly, how do we convince, and this is already happening, all the big companies that are part of this discussion to use AI and technology to improve their own productivity, hopefully by reaching out to Greek companies first, rather than just importing tools. And of course, when it comes to the infrastructure, we're building lots of data centers in Greece because we can cover the energy supply. But this is not just about infrastructure and data sovereignty. it is about, in my mind, developing smart applications, both at the government and at the private sector level, that will improve productivity. And when it comes to the business of government, there I really think that we have an opportunity to leapfrog many other governments. Not many governments have what we have in Greece now. You look at, for example, I don't want to use the UK example, but look at countries such as Germany. Germany is still an analog country in many ways. What we have in Greece, I don't think has been recognized enough in terms of how important it is and how much we can build upon these foundations to launch sort of the next productivity revolution when it comes to the public sector. And if you look at sort of problems, big reforms, so for example, land usage, issuing building permits, we're implementing a big structural change. I mean, these are issues which technology will help us to address. Even issues which come from the past. We have big issues now in Greece in terms of our agricultural subsidies. But this is essentially a problem of merging databases and cross-referencing information that already exists. It's a painful transition right now, but in a year from now, we will be able to ensure that whoever, is entitled to an agricultural subsidy will get the amount that they're entitled to. And because we're cutting out fat and corruption from the system, the true farmers will receive more money because the pot is the same. So this is an example of a reform that may be painful in the short term, but in the medium to long term, it's the right thing to do. So I'm a big believer in technology as an enabler, and there are many, many examples of how we can make our life easier and how we can be very, very innovative in terms of how we use technology to also deliver better public services.
I think especially as you talk about this critical partnership between public and private, I think that's absolutely right. It would be remiss of me to not cover the fact that we are in a midst in a period of deep geopolitical complexity. Can we sort of shift a bit to your views on Europe's roles, European initiatives to enhance and strengthen global security, and is there a role for Greece in that, or is that just a big sort of European project?
I think that Greece has regained its credibility in Europe, and this allows us to punch above our weight. We now have, a candidate for the president of the Eurogroup. He'll be joining you tomorrow, I understand. There are two candidates, a Belgian and a Greek. I don't know what's going to happen, but the fact that Greece, 10 years after the fiscal crisis, is credibly able to actually compete for the presidency of the Eurogroup, I think is indicative of the progress that we have made and of the fact that we aspire to play a role in European affairs. We've been able to do it in the past, in difficult times. For example, I remember COVID and the vaccination certificates. We were at the forefront of opening up tourism, during COVID. So we've actually demonstrated that we can contribute to the European debate, and certainly this is a role I aspire Greece to play. And when you look at Europe now, we have specific priorities on the agenda. I mean, the Draghi report says it all. But at the end of the day, have we made enough progress? The answer is no. Energy, interconnections, creating a true European energy market to bring down the price of energy for everyone. Savings and investment union, what we used to call capital markets union. I mean, we are delivering on that front. I mean, the Athens Stock Exchange is now part of Euronext, so we are open to be part of bigger projects. There are, foreign banks taking stakes in Greek banks. So we believe in this broader European story. Simplification. I was reading an article yesterday in the FT about the cost of submitting an application to the Innovation Fund. It's absurd. I mean, we've created a European bureaucracy that is stifling innovation and just adds, at the end of the day, it's probably not worthwhile for companies to actually go through all that pain. Single market. The 28th regime, this is something that Letta wrote about. This is so important. Can we create a legal structure that would allow our startups to do business in all European countries? So these are 4 thematics, and I've not spoken yet about the geopolitics and about defense, where I aspire Greece to actually play a role and to contribute to the debate. And I would also argue that we're in a different situation. We spoke a lot about the success of our economy. It is directly correlated to political stability. If you look at the European countries now, there are countries which are in a mess because the politics don't work. The politics in Greece do work. And they will continue to work, and I'm convinced about that even after the 2027 elections. Because at the end of the day, people are very much aware that they need a stable government to deliver safety and prosperity. And right now, I'm afraid that New Democracy is the only game in town when it comes to have a credible proposal on how to govern the country and take it forward. That's why I'm also very optimistic about the 2027 elections. And of course, I would point out again in this audience that the elections will take place in the spring of 2027. You know, I've been attending this conference numerous times, and I do remember the skepticism when I first came before the 2023 elections. At the time, the one question is, will you have an absolute majority? I said yes, many people questioned it, and we delivered. And I remember the polls, you know, in April of 2023 indicating that we were at 33% and we go to 41%. We have a story to tell. We delivered on our promises. We have a story to tell about the future of the country, the next 5 years, and that's why I think this currency of political stability is so important, not just in Greece, but also in Europe. So when we talk in Europe and try to make our case about what's good for Europe, I think we're being listened to, and I think we have the capability, especially when you sit at the European Council. You wear 2 hats. You wear your national hat, and you wear your European hat. And I'm fully aware of the fact that, of course, my national priorities are important. But if Europe doesn't do well, we're not going to do well. If, I don't know, the big European markets enter into a recession, what will this mean for our tourism? So we're not an island of of growth in a sea of turbulence. We need to ensure that Europe also does well in order for us to do even better.
Well, you're absolutely right that political stability matters to funding markets. It's really a key priority to see stability when investing and financing. Voters, though, care about social issues and social matters. Just before I open it up to the audience, do you want to comment on a couple of sort of the social programs and social agenda for Greece? And you have highlighted the importance of education, you know, obviously having the right talent, particularly as you continue to diversify the economy. Any sort of concluding remarks there?
I think we're at the time when all incumbents are under pressure, some more so than others, but it's also true for us. Cost of living is a real problem. One needs to acknowledge it openly. It's all good to talk about, you know, the macroeconomic performance, but people need to feel it in their pocketbook. And my number one priority is to ensure that the macroeconomic success is translated into people doing better on a personal level. And what does this mean? Support of disposable income. It means better wages. It means also, you know, for the companies that are, you know, part of this group to understand that, you know, as the economy is doing better, they need to share the prosperity of their company with their employees. We've seen increases in nominal wages, but we can do better. And of course, we are returning 1.7 billion euros in tax cuts. So if you're a young person today in Greece under 25, you will pay 0 income tax. 0. So, and this is particularly important at a time when we want to direct more young kids towards technical education, vocational training. That's where the skills we need. If you talk to the companies, where do they need skills? That's where they need. And I want these companies to actually train them. If you enter the job market at 22, for example, or 20, for 5 years, you will not pay income tax. And between 25 and 30, you will pay 9% instead of 22%. And for families with children, bigger tax credit, depending on the number of children you have. So people will see that in their paycheck come January. And this is important because this is a real concern to people. So I think the biggest mistake that we can make is be sort of arrogant about our overall economic performance without recognizing that this needs to translate to better real wages, but also better public services. We've made big improvements in healthcare, and I'm happy about that. There is a transformation taking place in our national health system. People are recognizing, are beginning to recognize it. Look at, for example, the future of healthcare and the costs. We are at the forefront in terms of preventing screening examinations in Greece. This is the future of healthcare. So people need to understand that we care about them. We may not always be able to solve all their problems. Nobody is. But we care and we try. These are two important words that need to be at the forefront, because it's very, very dangerous for us to come to these beautiful investor conferences, get all the, get the applause that I think to a certain point we deserve, but recognizing that this needs to be, we're politicians and we're here to improve people's lives. And of course, we all have a role to play, companies, in terms of offering, better wages and more benefits. I'm happy about the fact that we have a collective bargaining agreement in Greece. For the first time, trade unions, employers and employees sat down and said, we can actually get to a point where we need more collective bargaining in Greece. This is good for both sides. I mean, everyone, banks, in terms of providing more credit to the real economy, more mortgages. We still don't have enough mortgages in Greece. So we need to understand that we need a new social contract, although I don't like the term because it's been overused, and that essentially everyone needs to understand that they have skin in the game, that they have something to look forward to. If the country does well, this is not just a story about a few people. It's a story about the majority of Greeks need to benefit from this new shared prosperity.
And it certainly, all of that contributes to just continued improvements in productivity, which is vital for the economy. Thank you, Prime Minister.